Hey, what's going on, everybody? BDF44 coming at you with another video. Just got through listening to LeBron James' comments at the end of the game yesterday, his press conference. And I try to make it a point not to really draw too much from press conferences because really they're separate from the game. A lot of times the players have to say what they feel that represents the team best or their brand's best rather than being forthcoming with how they feel. That's just not the setting for people to be open and honest. When they are, they're usually criticized for it or it becomes a meme or whatever. So I'm not really in love with press conferences. Sometimes, particularly after playoff games, it's interesting to know what players are thinking, but regular season games is rarely interesting to me. Honestly, I'm not the soundbite guy. But in this conversation, I felt LeBron James touched on some things that I was looking for clarity on, looking for him to kind of let us know where he stands with the franchise, put forth what it is that he wants the public to understand about where things are at. And he said he's here, you know. He lives in the moment, which is something very consistent that he said since he's been here. The rest of us tend to look at athletes and assume that they have plans or assume that they're able to kind of project forward because we're constantly projecting forward. But a guy like LeBron James has made it very clear that in his mind, through his eyes, he's really not thinking about the future. He's more so thinking about the moment. It's particularly on the basketball floor. And that's something we have to absorb and take true, because at the end of the day, you don't get to hear much from these players. And you get to a point where you listen to these third parties speak so much that you believe them over the players. You know what I mean? You just assume the player's lying because of the reasons I said to start the video, protect their interests or whatever, protect the team. And you assume that the media member is being forthcoming because they're coming to you with all the juice that otherwise the players can't tell you or won't tell you or isn't true in some cases. So it gets tricky. You just get used to hearing that third party. So when you hear from the player, you want to believe them. And so in this case, this is what I was doing. This is listening for what I felt were truths in between the PR stuff. And what I got from him was he's trying to do what he's supposed to do in regards to this PR situation with him looking like he's on the odds with the Lakers. He's basically saying he's here. He's saying that he doesn't go around pressing buttons in regards to our franchise. He did to admit that he understood that Rich Paul had met with Laker brass, talk about what's going forward. He was not a part of that meeting, and he said he found out the same way the rest of us did. You know, and I just took from what he was saying that, you know, he's committed. He wants to be here. Obviously, he ain't lying about wanting to play with his kid if it's possible. It's a dream of his, and he's serious about it. But he doesn't know that it's possible, and he doesn't want us running with his words in that regard, which I think, you know, a lot of that, I felt like you have to do that. Like, LeBron James has to mend fences with the Lakers, even if the decision is made to leave, even if he secretly isn't on, you know, in the same page. It's in his best interest and that of the best interest of his company to keep a good relationship with the Lakers. And one thing that he said I thought was interesting was he felt a lot of people have jealousy between the relationship that he has with the Lakers. You know, I think that was what he was trying to convey, that he feels that there's a lot of people out there who want to break up his Laker tenure because they don't like the fact that he's gotten this close to this team. And I guess I don't have enough context to really weigh that against truth or what may not be, but what I can say is you can see how that could be possible. And given the fact that the Lakers are such a massive brand, and, you know, not only as it pertains to history, but as it pertains to revenue and importance and, you know, all that. And the fact that he is such a massive brand on his own, when those two brands come together, it's a lot of money to be made. And I think there are a lot of people out there, ownerships, particularly who would feel a lot better if LeBron James were making that money for them, and don't feel that, you know, the Lakers necessarily need LeBron James as to where maybe a Cleveland or small market Sacramento, somebody like that, literally needs that revenue, would booster them and put them in a much different place. So I understand that the environment for jealousy could be there. Um, so for me, it's like, as I listen to him, I say to you guys, I only got only a fourth of what I took from that felt like it was real. I think a lot of that was just PR stuff. A lot of that was him having to mend fences with the Lakers to finish out the season so that it doesn't be a distraction. Um, I think him saying he lives in the moment could be something you take seriously, but it also could be something that just keeps him from having to answer questions about his future. And, you know, it just is what it is. I like LeBron James as a player. I just wish he made better choices with the power that he has when he arrives on these teams. I think he would make for a much more successful situation. It goes to show that you could be the best player in the world and have the gifts of making others better. But if you control the environment and the environment is not very good, then you still are working behind the eight ball. And that's what I was saying about him having a mentality of winning. It's a very unique situation because I do believe he has a winner's mentality as it pertains to going on the floor and executing the science of basketball. But as it pertains to maneuvering the environment with his power so that he has everything that he needs to succeed, all of the tools in his toolbox, he didn't put himself in a position to constantly have all the tools in his toolbox to make sure that he was ready for everything that the season would provide to see it all the way through. He wanted certain things that he wanted that didn't necessarily look good on paper. It's almost like, stock trading with your emotions. Instead of, following the charts, you're really just kind of jumping in at a disadvantage, even though your intentions are to succeed. And I think that's what LeBron James is dealing with. They talk about the game of basketball. When you dig deep into it, you understand that it's not just about getting your mechanics right, dribbling, shooting, moving side to side. It ain't just about that. You got to manage the clock. You got to manage your rotations. You got to have everything has to fall in place. Your strength and conditioning, people have to work with the shooters so they can have the strength to get through a game. You got to have depth on you. There's so many different things. It ain't just guys shooting the ball. And when it all works in unison, you have a winning situation. Well, that's a metaphor for a guy like LeBron James's power. He has all the skills and mechanics. He has all the gifts to make him the best player. But when it's time to manage his quote unquote timeouts, which is, who I want to play with, how to manage the cap of the team I'm on, how to structure it so that I'm not the only one succeeding on the court as it pertains to having everything we need, making sure that my my bigs are a good fit for me, making sure my point guard is an extension of the ability to move the ball like I can, making sure that the players I have are defensive, making sure I have all the elements of basketball so that I can compete at the highest level. That's the aspect of the game that he has not succeeded in just yet. He's made 10 finals or 10 finals, 9 in a row off the strength of how great of an individual player he is and how the strength of how he understands how to make the most out of the game for himself. But it's that other aspect. That he was poor at, but he just assumed so much confidence in. And that's where it frustrates me. It's like to be such a massive genius on the basketball floor, but then to not understand your own limitations as it pertains to being a GM, deferring to others and hiring people smarter than you and those type of things, and how to succeed in life. It isn't always about making sure that you know your part. It's about making sure that you can delegate people who can help others learn their part, and making sure that those people in those places are who they need to be when they're there. Those are things that also need to be played a certain way, also need to be executed properly. No different than your timeouts and all that other stuff I tell you about that's outside of the game on the court. So, that's how I look at LeBron James. When we talk about a winner's mentality, that's where he doesn't have it. It ain't got nothing to do with doing nothing on the basketball court. It's about how he prepares his teams and how he allows the organizations he plays for, and allows, it's the key word, to maneuver around him. And then I think the environment that comes from him being unhappy also can be a detriment to that as well. When he's upset, now he's doing a lot of things that can be, perceived as passive aggressive communication through the internet. And he sits back like on the interview today or in the press conference here, and he basically says that that's don't believe any of that. That's not what I'm doing. It's like, but your actions speaking here, like your actions in the history has spoken louder than these words. So you can deny that. You can say that that's not really what we're seeing, but it is. It's the consistency of it all. And so I like Bron. I just wish that he were better at that aspect of the game since he took that power and ran with it. Just because you have the right doesn't mean you're right for expressing that right. Sometimes it's incorrect to express that right at that moment or in that way. Or maybe you're not the right person for that power if you just so happen to have it. If you truly possess power, then you got to have the wisdom to know when you're the right person to use it and when it's best for you to withhold it and delegate those duties to someone who understands those particulars better than you. That is also a winning mentality maneuver. And so it's up to the Lakers to develop that winning mentality themselves. You don't even allow a guy to come in and do all of that. You don't even bring him in to let all this go to work. You put him in a position to know what his limitations are before signing, so that he doesn't put himself in a position that to make these decisions with your roster, with your franchise. I think Bron was going to be Bron wherever he goes, and when you sign up to be with Bron, you sign up for what comes with that. And I just feel like we signed up without really having the wisdom about what came with it. We got one championship, but now we got a hole we need to dig ourselves out of. It's probably take us about 5 years to get out of. And I just don't think that's a good exchange for our franchise. But all in all, Bron is going to continue to truck along. Maybe we get lucky, and we're able to trade AD without losing him. Maybe that's the move, and we trade AD for a bunch of future assets, and we're able to maneuver that somehow by getting rid of Russell Westbrook as well, and then maybe we could bring in a competitive team next season and shock the world. But the truth of the matter is, decisions up top to keep Frank Vogel. I think even if we did something like that, he would still find a way to lose. He would force us into losing with his rotations and stuff like that. As you know, that's always my opinion. So until you make some actual changes, I just don't see much hope for this LeBron tenure. And LeBron could say he's on board. You could say he's all in, he's with us. But if you're not moving in lockstep with what's best for the franchise, both short and long term, particularly long term, since that's what we've mortgaged, then you're not really on our side. You see what I'm saying? You could be here, but only to the detriment of what it is that we need to start doing. It's almost like having Dame. Dame is a guy who ain't gonna want to rebuild, in theory. This is all in theory. But what I'm saying is now you're stuck with his contract when your timeline is somewhere else. If he's not on board with helping the youth, he's just kind of along for the ride. And that's not what we need. What the Lakers need right now is something that is kind of independent of LeBron James' success. And what we need is to develop our young players, find gems like Austin Reeves and turn guys like THT into what it is we paid them to be. That is what we really need to do right now. Not continue mortgaging our future for a last hurrah with LeBron James. I don't think that's the best move for us right now. We need to recoup. We need to recalibrate assets. We acquire assets, rather. And basketball, in between the lines is actually secondary, even third on the list of our priorities right now. So that's just the reality of it. I'm a fan who's always going to speak on that. And if Bron wants to help us, help develop these youngsters. Seriously. Suggest that we get rid of all the players that we've brought in to help with this timeline and bring in G League guys that we can turn into something. That is the best thing for our team. That way, if we can get them to turn into something, maybe we can get lucky and either trade them at the trade deadline next season or even sooner in the off season. But the point is, we got to turn them into something in order for that to happen. And that's not going to happen if we continue to lean on our vets. It's just going to be more wasted assets that continue to go down the toilet for us. We need something to turn into something out of nothing. And so if Bron James can help us with that, which I have no doubt, his passing ability and his patience, he can help us with that. Does it benefit him to be on that mission? Only as it pertains to the outside perspective of his willingness to help at a disadvantage or to no benefit of him to himself. That's the only aspect of this that actually could benefit Bron. It's in a bunch of stuff that ain't got nothing to do with money or his legacy. And honestly, I just don't think he has the time to really be taking on passion projects that don't lead to championships. It's a waste of time. What is his connection to our franchise as it pertains to what happens after him? I don't know. But the incentive for him to help us with what we need, I just don't see where that incentive would be. I don't know why he would do that. I would appreciate it, but I just don't know why that would help him unless he's getting a stake of the Lakers. If Genie's gonna sell him 30% of the team, that may be something. But other than that, I don't think it's in his best interest to start focusing on our best interests as it pertains to how I define them. So, yeah, this is just a bad situation, man. Learn your lesson. Next time, build it easier, not harder. So that's what I got to say, man. I'm going to go eat some breakfast. I appreciate y'all for listening to me ramble. The Lakers do play another game soon. I will give you the updates on that as they come. And my name is BDF44, and I thank you all for watching. I'm out.